Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k Tyranids. Moving on to the next unit within the Tyranids index for a review. We're looking at the Hormagaunts, one of the little bug units that we've got at our disposal. So we're going to be checking them out, checking the datasheet, and also giving a Planet 40k review at the end of this video. So points cost to begin, there's 75 points for, no 70 points in fact for 10, or 140 points for 20. Now there used to be 8 points each in the previous edition, which would make 80 for 10 and 160 for 20, and you used to have to pay for the war gear as well, so they are slightly cheaper in this edition. Keywords of note from the rear side of the data card, we've got the infantry keyword. They are battle lines, so you can have up to 6 units of Hormagaunts if you wanted to, and they've got the endless multitude keyword, which will relate to a stratagem. You can have the mini of the 10 or 20, as you probably already guessed by now with the points, and every model is equipped with the Hormagaunt talons. So let's flip this card over and check out the statistics. To be honest, I don't think anything has changed here. The movement is still 10, 3 is a toughness, 5 plus armor save, wounds 1, leadership 8 plus, and objective control is 2. So yeah, everything is pretty much as it was. Now of course the leadership and objective control are new, well they're slightly new. Leadership was a thing in 9th edition, but we've got it in a completely different way now. 8 plus for the leadership, and objective control is a brand new stat. They've got 2 per model. When you've got a unit that's 20 Hormagaunts with objective control 2, that's potentially 40 on an objective if you can squeeze them all in. Probably not. But maybe you can even conga line them onto a couple of objectives and take over them that way. So, not too bad in terms of the statistics. Now, as for the weaponry, we've got the Hormagaunt talons. Now, they're also the same as well, in fact. 3 attacks, weapon skill 4+, strength 3, minus 1 AP, 1 damage. Now, I did expect the AP to go to 0, but they've kept minus 1 AP, which is pretty cool. A lot of things that are sort of this week went to 0 AP, and this was expected to be one of them. But yeah, minus 1 AP is okay. Now if you've got 20 gaunts, in theory that's 60 attacks. Of course you've got to get them all in. They're not likely to all be in the fight, and that's providing that they've all made it to the fight. But let's just, for the sake of this discussion, all 20 have got in. That's 60 attacks, and you've got 30 hits from that because they're hitting on force. This is all averages of course. Against toughness 3, you've got 15 wounds there. Toughness 4 and 5, you're going to have 10 wounds, and toughness 6 or more, you're looking at only 5 wounds. So that's the kind of rough estimates in terms of averages that these talons can do. Now you can of course improve these stats by using our hyper adaptations. For example, if you chose Swarming Instincts and you got sustained hits 1 on all your attacks, any unmodified hit rolls of a 6 will give you an additional hit against infantry and swarm. So again, if you've got 60 attacks, on average that's going to be 10 more hits there. The same can apply with hyper aggression. If you're going up against monsters and vehicles with lethal hits, there's going to be potentially 10 automatically wounding hits there, and high predators you could go against characters with precision, but that's completely different I suppose. But yeah, you've got that way of bumping up the stats. You've also got other ways such as stratagems. We're going to talk more about the stratagems later on, but Adrenal Surge, where you can get 5+ critical hit rolls instead of 6+, and then you're going back to your hyper adaptations, and again sustained hits 1 would now be 5s and 6s, so that could be potentially 20 extra attacks there. And you've also got Synaptic Insight, where you can actually select a different hyper adaptation for that phase, or that battle round rather. So there are ways of improving the damage output from the Hormagaunts. Now to be honest, they're not doing a massive amount of damage, they're doing a little bit. They're more about board control. Again, we'll talk about that part in the battlefield role section. Now let's move over to the right hand side of the data card, the abilities. Synapse will is the faction ability. They're not within, they've got to be within Synapse to gain Synapse. Ideally, this is the kind of unit that you do want to make sure is within Synapse, because object control 2 is quite important, and if you're trying to hold on to these objectives and you fail Battle Shock, then that's not a good day. Now I know Battle Shock isn't the biggest thing anyway, but if that's your entire game plan, having hordes and hordes of little bugs everywhere, and you're not with any object control because you've lost it with Battle Shock, then your whole game plan has been depleted. Now the Bounding Leap is the ability they've got, which is you're eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which you advance. So they're moving 10 inches, you've got the advance roll which is D6, let's just say you're moving 13, 14 on average, and then you can actually declare a charge which is up to 12 inches. So there's quite a lot of ground to be made up just for one single turn in fact. So I like that, that's pretty good. Now the battlefield role for the Hormagaunts, well I've got 4 for you today. The first one is primary scoring. If you're going to be taking over the battlefield, Getting onto the primary objectives, the mission objectives, you're going to be scoring those primaries with OC2 with these guys. And if it's taken hold, for example, you're getting 5 EP for every single objective. It depends on the mission, I suppose, but you're going to be scoring your victory points from primaries with these guys. You can also talk about the secondary objectives. Again, they do relate slightly to the actual objective markers. It could be secure no man's land as an example, getting onto objectives, or extend battle lines as another example. But there's also other ones like cleanse, where you have to do a little action in order to gain it. Area denial is another one. Now they're not necessarily going to be the one doing the action, because area denial, for example, you need to wholly be within 6 inches of the centre. They're probably not going to be. If you've got a unit of 20 of them, you can take a unit of 10, I suppose. But maybe they're going to be the ones that are screening off so that your opponents aren't in there, or just fending it off, fighting their way to make sure that you have denied that area space. But that's just one example. There's plenty more, and they can be doing all those kind of secondaries. The third bullet point, I've got board control. If you're swarming out and just taking over the entire battlefield, it means your opponent has got less space to work with, less movement, and therefore they're not getting to the places they want to go. Again, whether it's objectives, whether it's trying to get to our juicy targets, just to get into our deployment zone potentially for, investigate signals, for teleport homers, find enemy lines, all that kind of stuff. If we've controlled the board with all these bugs everywhere, it's going to make it quite difficult for your opponent to gain ground and gain the places they want to go to. And the fourth one I've got here is a melee screen. I've just thrown this in there because you could just opt for Hormagaunts instead. They're cheaper. But the Hormagaunts, you can still use them as a melee screen. That's in fact why I put the word melee there, because Hormagaunts are not melee, they're shooty screen, but they are cheaper. Now if you wanted to try and protect, say, your Tyranids, your Exocrines, these could potentially do that job. They don't necessarily need to be the ones to do that job. They can go up the battlefield and be sort of a first wave, second wave of attack, or you can use them as a defense. Maybe anti-deep strike as well is another thing to do with them, but it's going to be like screening off your models. Stratagem wise, there's quite a lot to interact with the Hormagaunts. The first one is Death Frenzy, which I don't normally talk about. I don't really like this stratagem, I never really use it, but I thought maybe this is a video where I can actually discuss this stratagem. So you pop this for one command point in the fight phase just after your enemy has selected the target. So you can't use it after you've lost models, you've got to use it before you've lost your models. And one Tyranid unit, basically you get to roll a 4+ on all the models that have died, and on a 4+ they can stand fight before death. Now I'm not saying that's going to be a game changer for this kind of unit as well with strength 3. Potentially they've only got 1 or 2 models left, and they could have like a high OC maybe, so they've got hold of an objective. So you pop Death Frenzy, and therefore you bring up, like, say, 10 models. You actually remove their last 1 or 2 models from that objective, so therefore they're not going to be scoring it. So it does come into those situations where you really do need to remove a model or 2. Overon is another one I don't really discuss that often in the fight phase. Again, after you've consolidated, or as you're about to consolidate rather, you can move 6 inches rather than 3. And if you're within synapse, in fact, you can just go in any direction, as it's basically a normal move, 6 inches. So you're gaining even more ground with quite a speedy infantry unit anyway, because let's just imagine it was your opponent's turn that you use this on, because it's just a fight phase. Your turn's coming up, you just move 6 inches in your opponent's fight phase, you're now moving 12, you're now advancing again. You're just making up so much ground from this. 2 more here that we kind of spoke about when we were talking about the weapons in the datasheet. Adrenal Surge to be activating critical hits on a 5+, and you can also change up your hyper adaptation for the battle round with Synaptic Insight. Let's say you went for the, I can't remember what they're called now, the third one with Precision. Let's just say you chose that for the entire game, but you really wanted the Infantry and Swarm Sustain Hits 1 ability on. You could spend a CP on Synaptic Insight and 2 CP for Adrenal Surge for critical hits on a 5+. Ideally you want a Hive Tyrant to do one of these for free, obviously the 2 CP one, because that's more expensive, but you've got options there if you do have CP. And the last one, of course, Endless Swarm, because they've got the Endless Multitude keyword in their data card, so you can be regaining D3 plus 3 destroyed models in your command phase. So that's going to be an average of 5 models coming back, which isn't too bad really. I mean, if these guys were, what were they? They were 70 points for 10, so that's on average, that's 35 points coming back just from 1 CP, and you could do that every single turn. So let's move into the pros and cons for the Hormagaunts, starting with the pros. They're OC2, which I think is decent. I mean, I know they're battle line, they're supposed to be OC2. But when you've got so many of these guys, 20 in a unit potentially, OC2 does become really strong. You're also going to relate that to board control, because you can spread these guys out, providing that you're in unit coherency, of course. You need to make sure you are. And when you are removing models, in fact, be careful what you're removing, because you could end up messing that up. I've done it in the past a few times. You take the wrong models out, and then you realise, oops, I'm not in unit coherency anymore. That's a big problem. But yeah, OC2, board control. You can also tie up units quite easily. Yes, you are going to lose some models, but you're preventing much better units from doing what they should be doing if you tied them up. You've got the speed, the 10-inch movement with advance and charge. I think that's pretty rapid, really, especially for infantry anyway. And they can be used as a screen to assist with your, terrain effects, execrete, even your zone tropes. You don't really want them in melee, so you're going to be protecting them while you've got the battlefield, then spawn off into other areas, and they can still actually fight. As for the cons, there's no range attacks, they're purely melee based. There's no leaders that can go within this unit, and nothing that really synergizes. I mean, the Hormagaunts have got the Turvigon, whereas the Hormagaunts don't really have anything. So they're just kind of doing, they're just on their own, really. They're bugs, so they do go squish. They're only toughness 3, only 1 wound, and a 5+ armor save. They're not going to stay up that long if they are targeted. But if they're targeted, it means your opponent isn't targeting the juicier stuff. Maybe. Unless they've got anti-infantry, then hey, whatever. And finally, the Hormagaunts are a cheaper screen. If you wanted to use them purely for screening, you've got other cheaper options within your index. Ripper Swarms maybe, but there's only 3 in a unit there. Hormagaunts, as we just mentioned, there are other options. So, as for our Planet 40k rating today for the Hormagaunts, I think they're okay. I think they're better than Hormagaunts, even though they're more expensive. That advance and charge is pretty cool. So for me, I'm going to be giving them an average 3-star rating, although I would slightly put them above the Hormagaunts at this moment in time anyway. So what do you think, guys? Do you agree with my rating? Let me know down in the comments below. Make sure you are subscribing, of course, on your exits, and thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.